Meeting to order, and the first thing on our agenda is presentation from Admiral Sound Base. You're up, sir.
Thank you, sir.
I didn't even recognize it.
Well, I felt, you guys weren't ties, I needed to be in the same. Yeah.
1, 2.
Now we can see.
Yeah. Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor, Councilman. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I know you have a very big agenda tonight, so I'll be brief as I can. The United States Submarine Veterans National Association, just a quick background, was established at the end of World War II, shortly thereafter. And today, our mission remains, as then, to perpetuate the memory of the loss of the 3,506 shipmates lost on 52 submarines during World War II. That was the initial mission. Those souls remain under turtle control, never coming home. But today we also include the 13 submarines and crews lost since the inception of our Navy submarine force on April 11, 1900. So we've been around a little while. The Albemarle Sound Base, we call it a base similar to the American Legion as a post. We're a sub-chapter of that national organization. Is home ported here in Edenton and has been, well, we were initially stood up in 2008 in Elizabeth City, and about 2013, Frank Jones became commander and moved the base officially here to Edenton. We meet once a month. We used to meet at the soda shop. Now the American Legion offers up Space Force to meet every first Saturday of the month. And our commander remains Frank Jones. I'm also accompanied by Ray Ollert, our fundraising chairperson. She's a ball of fire. She got this project off the ground. We've been sitting on it for about a year and a half, and a little background, but she said, let's get this thing going. So, and here I am tonight. But our mission tonight is to obtain your formal approval of the site we desire for our base to donate and install what we have named the Silent Service Memorial Bench as part of our mission. The site we desire, there are photographs in the yellow packets we distributed, is on that grassy area along this east side of the waterfront, right there by the bulkhead. And well, it would be facing the lighthouse and just shy of the boaters pump out station. And there is a photograph marking, showing the location that Corey and I and Anne Marie all looked at, and then the electricians came down to take a look at it. And so we had a good feel for this was going to be a suitable site, but that's what I'm here to formally establish. Also, there's a nice photograph in there of the view someone sitting on the bench would have of the lighthouse, and of course that's a popular spot, as we all know, for the sunset photographs and things of that nature. The photo of the bench in the packet, that's the Sergeant Parker. Many of you remember the Parker family, and he was a sergeant here on the Edenton Police Department. Well, when he passed away, not too awfully long ago, they created that black granite bench with a very nice laser etched image of him and his son Frank and daughter-in-law Suzanne now are in Knightsdale, North Carolina. They still own and operate the Parker Monument Incorporated, and we've selected them as our vendor. Because of the nature of that bench, we want to replicate that with the exception. We'll put our insignias and our submarine dolphins and our logos, and note that why it's there. It's a silent service memorial bench. That was another thing that Ray came up with. We had a big, long name for this project. She said, Silent Service Memorial Bench. And it works very nice. But that bench is available to us. We are at the point to kicking off a formal fundraising campaign, as well as order the bench, secure it. There are 2 of them identical to that in the country. And we're going to do it exact as the Parker bench. With a real quick note, one of the big hurdles we saw was with the desired site, that there might be a conflict with underground utilities running to the pump out station and also over the pole, to the telephone pole where I get my power now. But there will be no conflict based on meetings with Corey and the electricians who were down there one day, and we talked about it. So the site wouldn't be cast in iron, but we would adjust it as the installation proceeded. Parkers have guaranteed they are committed to working with your folks, Corey, to ensure that we won't interfere with future access to those underground utilities, and so I'm comfortable with that, and I'll let Corey speak for himself on that. But pardon me for a minute. But we thought that was a very important when selecting, having the latitude to put it further over here in Colonial Park or over in Mrs. Van Moore's Park. That was a site that just needed something, we felt, and we liked the view. Our local base members have donated nearly half of our project financial goal, which is $10,000. That will allow us to do a very vibrant fundraising campaign with multimedia. And also, Ray is leading the county fair initiative. Will be a nice presence out there and raising funds and etc. And so we're really got some momentum going now, basically coming from within our own organization. But your approval of our intended site will enable the base to officially launch that public fundraising campaign, as well as making our financial commitment to secure the bench through Parker Monuments. And with that, we do appreciate your support in commemorating our shipmates' sacrifice. And I thank you very much for this opportunity. And I open it, I welcome your questions, if any.
Anybody have any questions of Mark?
Just a couple. Captain Mark, you talked about this bench not having any underground effect on the utilities. On top of the ground, it's not going to interfere with any use of the pump out station?
No, all those lines, they've been down there on other projects and resolution of issues, and they're approximately 2 foot back from where the bench will sit, more towards the bulkhead than where those lines run. The bench also includes, and the cost to Parker includes the installation as well as a, I believe it's 4 by 2 by 4, so 2-inch concrete granite composite slab, and it weighs about 475 pounds. The bench weighs about 490 pounds. but we would certainly, I have the specs from Parker with those facts, and we'll provide those to the town to make sure it coincides with what your engineers perceive as adequate. And that's another area where they said, we will work with Edenton, but they feel like they're still Edenton residents, citizens. So they're very respectful of Edenton and what we do here. Yes,
Do
Craig?
you have a target date of when you would like to see that?
Yeah, there's a cover letter in the package, and I don't have mine with me. Our target date, we have two actually, because if we are unable to act quick enough to secure the two benches in the United States, they have to go overseas for the grant. That puts us out from the day we make our deposit 1 year. We're shooting, if we can secure it quickly enough for the ones in the States, we're looking at a 6 months target. And we have three dates we are targeting. May I have that sheet, please? Thank you, Rick. Our start date for the fundraising actually is passed. We started about the 5th of March, again with our club members. The project end date, the latest would be the 1st of April next year. And the 11th of April is the 123rd anniversary of the Submarine Force, so that would have some relevance when we do that. If we can move in the 6-month time frame, we had the Navy anniversary in
It's the 13th of
October. Yeah, in October. So we're targeting that right now with the assumption that the momentum we have will carry on. And another date, obviously, would be the Veterans Day in November. So those are, and that will be mandated by how well the fundraising goes, how quickly it goes. Our big fundraiser, we suspect, obviously we'll do a mailing out to a large number of known contributors to these type of events, and also our national organization and through their resources. So if it moves along, we could realistically see a November dedication. We will probably target a groundbreaking to help maintain the momentum and also the awareness out there. So we'll invite all you folks to come down and we'll get a golden show and turn over some dirt, and it's a real deal. Yes,
Well,
Tim?
I just want to thank you, number one, you and Ray for doing this, and I mean, it's great, it's what, it's what being in a small town is all about. I'm happy to send me a thing, I'm happy to make a, donation, and y'all really to be, I just appreciate y'all doing all of this, and I think it's gonna be a great, asset to the community.
Well, it's a bench, but it does reflect the community and our, much like Memorial Park, Ray and I were speaking just before the meeting started. I came from a town that was 5 times the size of Edenton, and you guys kill it with your Memorial Days, your Veterans Days. I mean, everybody's out there. They got the flags, they got the poppies, and people really take it serious and observe it. And so this is one way to say, from our side of the house, the veterans and whatnot, thank you, because it is a two-way street, and we do appreciate the support you show us. And hopefully you probably saw our torpedo in the float, so that was the local boys, and I think we had it pointed at a church group. My wife didn't think that was very appropriate. But nonetheless, yes, you're on the middle of this, thank you. Counting on you, Sam.
Yeah, I'll be glad to.
Does anyone else have any questions with Captain Mark? Captain Mark, we really appreciate this, and it is a very nice looking bench that you're presenting to us, and we thank you for what you do with this town and in this town. We thank you.
It's been a pleasure for us. Is there any expectation on formal approval? Is that
Yes,
something?
I was gonna say, because of the timing and because of how important it is for the group to secure the bench, the one of the two that you speak of, what we would need tonight is council to take action with a motion and a second to approve the location as presented.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ladies. That's exactly what we need to get this thing and maintain our momentum. So thank you again. All.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll let you get on with the more serious
Okay.
business.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on our special meeting is a presentation from the Chohum County Reappraisal presentation. And that's for Melissa Radke and Ryan Vincent.
Mayor, Council, thank you so much for having us tonight. I'll be brief so that way Brian can be a little more lengthy with you tonight. As you know, we have done our 2022 reappraisal for Chohum County. It includes the town of Edenton, obviously. And we are here tonight just to simply present our findings to that, give you a little bit more information, as well as give you information on appeals and things of that nature. So I will just go right in and turn it over to Ryan Vincent. He is the owner of Vincent Valuations, the contractor we hired to complete our reappraisal. Ryan?
All right, thank you. We've been busy today with phones, so as I'm sure y'all have gotten some phone calls from your constituents. So normally we do these presentations before the notices go out, but this is the last one we have, and this is a little unique since the notices have already gone out. But what we're going to cover is a little bit about why we do reappraisal, how we do it, some things we've seen, and then now subsequently the appeal process to go through if you disagree with your new valuations. I assume you're the operator of the screen? Okay. So reappraisal is the process in which we go through and we revalue all property as of a particular day and bringing it up to its current market value. And when we talk about this, we're talking about all real property. That includes the land and any buildings that are permanently affixed to it. So we do this because state law tells us we have to do it at least once every 8 years. So Chohum County is on an 8-year cycle. The last time your property value changed in Chohum County was 2014, except for a few exceptions, like if you built a house or renovated it or split or combined a piece of land. Those are usually the only reasons that value changes in a non-reappraisal year. So again, this is over an 8-year cycle. And the most important thing here to remember is that the tax office, next slide please, sorry. So market value is the most probable price that a willing buyer and a willing seller would pay in the marketplace. So again, we're looking at transactions of buyers and sellers in the market. And what's important to remember here is that at the tax office, we do not create market value. We're simply taking a snapshot of the actions of buyers and sellers in the marketplace and applying what's going on with the properties that sold to the ones that not only sold, but the ones that didn't sell also. So this reappraisal takes effect January 1st, 2022, which is a little over 3 months ago now, about 3 months ago. The new tax bills that go out with these values will go out in the summer of 2022. And we mailed notices last week. So everybody already has their notices in their hands, or should within the next day or so. So a couple basic steps to the reappraisal. So the first step we did was we went out and we visited every piece of property in the county. These two gentlemen I have here with me, Micah and Zach, they visited probably about 90% of the properties, and there was one other gentleman who visited a few who's worked with us for a while. And so what we did is we went and knocked on everybody's door. If someone was home, we asked them a few questions about the property, and then we measured the outside of all of the structures and then took photos. From there, that information is brought into the office, It's entered into the system, and then we start analyzing sales, and we start building what's called our schedule of values. So we're looking at what are people paying in certain areas based on quality, condition, age, location, all the things that a buyer and seller would look at in the market. So we're breaking down those transactions that happen, and we're building valuation models with those transactions. So a couple things that are difficult for us is we took a few phone calls today about this. We don't go inside folks' houses, so we have to estimate the inside from the outside. So for example, if you have a 2-story house, it clearly looks like it's 2-story on the outside, but let's say maybe in your living room you have high cathedral ceilings that go all the way up to the top of the 2nd floor. Well, that right there is only 1-story area, and we might not know that from looking at it from the outside. So some of the calls we took today were, hey, my upstairs area is not finished. So from there, what we do in the appeal process is we go out, and these gentlemen will go out and we'll verify that information and we'll update it accordingly. But again, through the general process, we don't go inside folks' homes. So that's some of the difficulties that we face. Excuse me. So we do it this way because we're responsible for valuing about 12,000 parcels of land, all as of one particular day. So we do things a little bit differently than a fee appraiser might. Again, we build valuation models. What a fee appraiser does is they value one property as of a specific day. So they go out and find 2 or 3 or 4 comparables and use those comparables to value a house. We use those comparables and break them down and build valuation models to value all of the houses and all of the land in a certain area. And we do it this way because it's the most reasonable and cost-effective way to do this. If we had to do a fee appraisal on every property in the county, it would be, the cost to the county would be dramatically higher. And we do things similar to what most taxing jurisdictions across the country do. So a couple ways that we check our values. The biggest thing we look at is called the sales ratio. So state law tells us that we have to appraise at 100% of market value. So I know in Edenton we have a lot of folks who actually retire here from out of town, and different states do things a little bit differently. I've worked in a few states throughout my career, and not all of them are like North Carolina. So we're tasked by state law to value at 100% of market value. What that means is that our sales ratio is simply taking the assessed value divided by the sale price, and that has to be as close to 100% as reasonably possible. That's what state law tells us to do. So that's one of the ways we test our reappraisal, is to see where our assessed value versus our sale prices fall and how close they are to 100%. Now the next few slides we're going to show are of different parts of the county. This is a county-wide presentation. So we're going to show different areas of the county. We're going to show a 2014 assessed value. We're going to show a recent sale price and a recent sale date, and the percent change that occurred between that previous value and the current sale price. So the first one here was in Wardville. It was assessed for $85,000 in 2014. It sold in October for $225,000, and that's an increase of 164%. Next one is in Wardville. It was assessed for $39,000, sold in May of 21 for $100,000, and that is an increase of 153%. Next one in Wardville was assessed for $124,000, sold in March for $258,000. That's an increase of 107%. Next one here was assessed for $159,000, sold for $305,000 in April, and that's an increase of 91%. Now we move to Arrowhead and Chohum Beach. This one was assessed for $98,000. Sold pretty close to our date of appraisal, which again was January 1st of 22. And that sold for $215,000, and that's an increase of 118%. This one was assessed for $69,000, sold for $145,000, and that's an increase of 109%. This one was assessed for $69,000 also, sold for $106,000, and that's an increase of 53%. This one was assessed for $80,000, sold for $102,000, and that's an increase of 27%. Then we move to Oak Hill and Morgan Park area. This one was assessed for $144,000, sold almost on our reappraisal date for $269,000. That's an increase of 87%. Now again, remember when you're seeing these increases, this is over the course of 8 years. This is not, on paper it's a 1-year increase, but over market terms, it's over the course of 8 years. So this one was assessed for $205, sold in April for $270. That's an increase of 31%. This one was assessed for $231, sold in February for $300. That's an increase of 30%. This one was assessed for $225, sold in January of 21 for $260. That's an increase of 15%. Then we move to downtown here. This one was assessed for $78, sold in March for $200. That's an increase of 153%. This one was assessed for $352, sold in September for $600. That's an increase of 70%. This one was assessed for $216, sold in March for $300. That's an increase of 39%. This one was assessed for $370, sold in November for $435. That's an increase of 17%. This one was assessed for $17,000, sold in December for $72,000, and that's an increase of 302%. This one was assessed for $24, sold in June for $53,000. That's an increase of 117%. This one was assessed for $31, sold for $58, and that's an increase of 85%. This one was assessed for $113, sold for $147. That's an increase of 30%. And in Edenton Bay, this one was assessed for $431, sold for $650. That's an increase of 51%. This one was assessed for $590, sold in December of 2020 for $789. That's an increase of 34%. And in Edenton Bay Plantation, this one was assessed for $725. That's okay. Sold for $725, or was assessed for $725. Sold for $849. That's an increase of 17%. And in Cape Colony, this one was assessed for $151, sold for $310. That's an increase of 104%. This one was assessed for $280, sold for $439. That's an increase of 57%. In Mulberry Hill, this one was assessed for $207, sold for $320. That's an increase of 55%. This one was assessed for $240, sold for $330. That's an increase of 37%. And this one was assessed for $69, sold for $135. That's an increase of 94%. This one was assessed for $103, sold for $165. That's an increase of 59%. So, as you saw, we've seen some small changes and some fairly dramatic changes. It depends on where you are, it depends on where you're located, and it depends on what you have. Now, one of the things we've seen just in this general real estate market across the state is the more affordable houses are going up more dramatically because there's more buyers that can afford a $100,000 house versus the same versus buyers that can afford $1 million house. So that's why we've seen a little more dramatic increase in the more affordable houses. Now, next we want to touch on the difference between appraised value and tax rates. So in the tax office, we are responsible for one side of the tax bill. That is the appraised value, and that's the letters that just went out to all property owners in the county. And on the other half of the tax bill is the tax rate. So the county commissioners and this board are responsible for setting the rates for their jurisdiction. Now, one of the calls that we've gotten fairly frequently today was, how is this going to affect my tax bill? And the answer to that is simply, we don't know how it's going to affect your tax bill yet. The rates are not set, and those rates will not be set until the budgeting process, which is in June. I believe y'all adopt a budget in June time. So next we're going to talk about appeals. I think if you could maybe go backwards a slide. Right there, yep, thank you. So we ask everybody to walk through a 3-step process when it comes to appeals. So you got your letter in the mail and you have a few questions. So the first question is, If you feel that that value is a fair value for what you think you could sell your house for as of January 1st of 2022, you don't need to do anything. There's no action required on your part. We've gotten calls today asking us, or just folks letting us know that they received the letter. We don't need those calls. We appreciate them, and if you have any questions, we can take them. But we don't need you to call us and let us know that you received your notice. So we ask everybody to go through a 3-step process. Again, if you agree with it, there's no action required on your part. But the first step is go online and review your information. So we put all your property information online. So we ask you to go online, and it was also in your notice. Your bedrooms, your bathrooms, your square footage, make sure all that stuff looks correct. If you have any discrepancies, we're going to ask you to go ahead and file an appeal, and we'll address that. But we need some sort of documentation from this point on as to why we adjusted values. That's why we're asking folks to file an appeal. If you've reviewed your information and you feel that it's correct, next we'd ask you to go online and use the GIS map. We've created a layer on the GIS map, and we've put all the sales for the last 2 years out there, all of what we considered valid transactions. And so you can go online and look at what folks are paying for certain properties in your neighborhood. So see what folks are paying for things around you, and if that value is similar to what your property is valued at, you're probably okay. If there's some difference or some questions, then we'd ask you to go ahead and file an appeal. You can file an appeal online. You can call our office. We can email you an appeal form, or you can come in and you can fill it out in the office. So a couple questions first about appeals. So these are a few reasons that we get when folks file an appeal, and these are reasons that we would say not to file an appeal. The first one is the amount of change from the previous reappraisal. And we've already gotten a few appeals in. We haven't gotten a lot in yet. We've gotten a few in, and the first reason that we commonly see is the percent change. So as we showed on previous slides, we've seen some fairly small changes and also some fairly dramatic changes depending on what kind of properties you have. So the percent change from the previous reappraisal is not a valid reason to file an appeal. The next reason is the affordability of the expected taxes. So again, we don't know what the tax rates are going to be, so we don't know how this reappraisal will affect your tax bill. And we know that this is an issue for folks. There are programs that are administered through our office. That's the elderly and disabled program, the veterans exemption, and also the farm use programs. Those are all programs that are dictated to us by the state. There's income requirements, age requirements. For the veterans program, there's a disability requirement. You must be 100% service-related disability through the VA. And for the farm use deferral, there's acreage requirements and income requirements depending on which part of that program you're in. And lastly is the level of services provided. I'm sure you folks as elected officials get calls from time to time about the amount of services that are provided by the town. Some folks like it, some folks don't, but that is not a reason to file a tax appeal. So if you do choose to file an appeal, this is what we're looking for. So we're looking for comparable properties. We're looking for any comparable sales that you feel show a substantially different value on your property. So these sales could come from the website that we've put out there of all of our sales that we use for the reappraisal. It could come from real estate professionals, or maybe you have some appraisals. There's been a lot of appraisals with the rates being as low as they were and a lot of transactions, so there's a lot of fee appraisals out there. And if you have any issues with your property, we had a few calls today saying I have foundation problems. We'd ask for photos or any sort of contractor estimates to document this. And we can take those as part of the appeal. So again, to recap here, if you have any data errors with your property, we can address those fairly quickly. As of right now, we're addressing those usually within a week. Depends on the amount of appeals that we get in, but we are addressing those fairly quickly. If you know somebody who may qualify from one of the benefit or tax relief programs, you want to have them contact our office, we'd be happy to walk them through the qualifications, and if they qualify, we can see about getting them enrolled and get them an application. Appeals should be based on value and not the previous value or the change in value from the previous reappraisal. And the most important thing here is the deadline to file an appeal. That deadline is May 2nd at 5 p.m. So we do have a typo here, which wasn't fixed. It was April 18th, but it's actually May 2nd. I don't know why that's in there, but again, the deadline is May 2nd to file an appeal. And if it's not in by May 2nd at 5 p.m., it will be considered for the next tax year. It won't be for the 2022 tax year. So a few key dates. The effective date of the reappraisal is January 1st. We've already mailed notices, so that date's in the past. We plan to begin the initial Board of Equalization appeal hearings on April 4th. And the deadline to submit appeals is May 2nd at 5 p.m. And the first tax bills that will be impacted by this reappraisal will go out in the summer of 2022. So again, the deadline to file your appeals is May 2nd at 5 p.m. And I'll take any questions.
I have some. One is, so you showed a couple houses in the redevelopment zone, and investors have bought them and then resold them, and but they put a ton of money in them, before they sold them, and they've gone up 120% or whatever. What does that do to the neighbors? I mean, I worry about
Oh, perfect. So that'll be nice.
I worry about the people that are in those neighborhoods that all of a sudden they're seeing. Do you apply that 117% growth factor to a house that's right down the street but not, fixed up to that standard? I mean, how does that?
Yeah, so we look at condition as part of the reappraisal. So if you have a house that, let's say, was built in 1940 and is all original, it's going to be valued less than that house that was bought by an investor and completely renovated, because we're going to put a higher condition rating on it, and therefore less depreciation is going to be applied to the base value of that structure. So they will have different values generally based on their condition, but like you might say, a rising tide lifts all boats. I did 2 reappraisals in Durham County, one in 2016 and one in 2019, and gentrification was a very big topic in both of those years in Durham County, and that was one thing that we saw, was folks coming into neighborhoods and investing a lot of money and lifting these neighborhoods up. And fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, those folks who weren't renovating their houses, their values went up with the neighborhood. Not as dramatic as the renovated houses, but they went up also.
That's something I'm just concerned about. And number 2, do you take into effect an historic preservation covenant on a piece of land that, like, you've got an old house, we have a lot of them in town, that have preservation covenants on the extra lot or the 2 lots beside it that can't be built on? Is that something y'all take into consideration?
So that's one thing that through the appeal process, if that was brought forth, we would definitely look at that. We would look at that very similar to the way we'd look at a lot that doesn't perk. If information is brought forth to us through the appeal process that we didn't know about prior to that, we would definitely consider that in the valuation. If you have a vacant lot that's in town that you can't do anything with, it's definitely not as valuable as the same lot that you can build a house on.
But is that something you would automatically know? I had a bunch of calls about that this week.
Yeah, that's something that we would not automatically know. So that's something that if that's the case and they feel that the value is incorrect, they can go ahead and file an appeal. And we'd ask them to submit some sort of documentation showing what the restrictions are for that particular lot that they're appealing.
And the third and final thing is an appraisal just, does it just keep going up the bigger the structure gets? Because big structures sometimes are a lot harder to sell than, everybody wants a, 2, 3 bedroom house. They don't want a, great big house, sometimes that's really too big for a modern day family. I mean, does it just, the size dictate? I mean, you just have a formula and you say, this size is this amount, if it gets bigger, it's that amount, and it just goes up, and up.
Yeah, so there's size factors built into our, what you might call our appraisal equation. So as the size increases, there is a size factor that's applied, and that size factor brings the value down a little bit. Think about it like a quantity discount. If I go to build a 1,000 square foot house, let's just say for round numbers, it costs me $100 a foot to build a 1,000 square foot house. If I build the exact same house in the exact same spot, to the exact same specs, and it's 5,000 square feet, it's going to cost me more money, but it's going to cost me less per foot because I have economies of scale in there. I'm buying more roofing, but my roofers are already there. I'm building a very similar house. So there's economies of scale that are built in, and we take that all into account through the valuation process. But ultimately, it comes back to what are buyers and sellers paying for things. So what we look at when we build those valuation models is we try to look at all of the sales in the area and figure out what people are paying for that quality and condition and size and location.
Thank you, this was a really great presentation.
Right. I have a question, and it may be appropriate to ask my question to Ms. Radke. We have a lot of low-income senior citizens living here in Chohum County. Are there any provisions made for them to pay the discounted property tax fee?
No, now, it's not automatic for Chohum County. However, just like Ryan was talking about, we do have those programs that they can apply for. We do have some pamphlets here at Town Hall where they can pay their water bill and electric bill, so they can certainly pick those up there. There are, again, income limits, age limits, requirements. The 100% disabled goes for anyone. They, again, have to be 100% disabled by a North Carolina physician. It has to be their main residence, so if they have multiple properties, it wouldn't include all of their properties, it would just be for their main residence. But there are other programs that are available to them by the state. In our office alone, we do payment plans, so those folks can get on a payment plan at any point in our office to help them, especially with those, income limits that they've got monthly, and things. We can set a payment plan up to help them along throughout the year. They don't have to wait just for those payment coupons that come in the annual bills. You can start paying at any point. So we've had a lot of folks take that in and start paying over 12 months versus paying over 2 or 3 or 4. So that's going to help to a lot of our seniors as well.
Thank you.
No problem.
If 2 houses on my street was renovated and you estimated the price of that value of the houses that was renovated went up, would that cause my taxes to go up too?
Well, we're not talking about taxes here, we're talking about valuation, about your assessed value.
Right.
So the question was, if 2 houses on your street you're saying were renovated, but yours was not, is that correct?
Yeah.
So that could cause it to go up. They might not go up as dramatically as the ones that were renovated, but yes, sir, they could. That could cause them to go up.
Okay, thank you.
Right. The deadline is May 2nd for filing an appeal.
Yes, sir.
And the inability to pay one's taxes or feeling that one can't pay them is not grounds for appealing, is that right?
That's correct.
So what happens to someone who does get their tax bill finally after the summer and has a problem? Is there any appeal process open to them at that point?
At that point, so the way the statutes are written is it actually divides the tax bill process and the valuation process. So that's why the valuation process happens now, and the deadline to appeal is, in this case, in May. And that is because when you file an appeal, you're appealing your tax value. You're appealing your appraised value. You're not appealing your tax bill. And so, like you said, when somebody gets their notice in the mail, there is no recourse for them to appeal at that point. They need to look at their value right now and see if this value is a reasonable value for what they can sell their property for as of January 1st of 2022. And if not, then they need to go ahead and file an appeal right now and provide evidence as to why they feel that that's something different. Like Melissa said, the county does offer payment plans, and there is some state mandated programs. Those programs are the same all across the state. It doesn't matter if you're in Chohum County or Bertie or Wake County or Mecklenburg County. Those programs and the income limits are the same across the state. That's not set by the county.
And I will add one thing, with those programs, especially the elderly exemption, exclusion program, all of those, they do have deadlines. So the deadline to apply for that for this particular year, 2022, is June 1st. That again is set by the state. So if folks even have an inkling that, they're worried about that and they'd like to apply, we welcome them to come. We've got applications at our office. They're also online. So go ahead and do that now. Regardless if they think, it could help them or not. It does include a reduction if they are approved. And again, we do offer those payment plans. So if folks do get their tax bill and they're going, oh my gosh, my income limits it's just not going to work, come to our office. We work with everybody. We've got Alicia, who is our delinquent collector. Her title sounds worse than it is. She will help anyone get on a payment plan just to fit in their budget. So it's not a big thing for us to put anyone on a payment plan who needs one.
Well, when you say payment plan, you're
Yes.
talking about the entire bill. You're not discounting anything.
No, unfortunately,
So
Chohum County is not a
spreading out their misery. Yeah.
well. Yeah, unfortunately, Chohum County doesn't do any discounts. The state doesn't allow that, and the county hasn't been a discount county where if you pay before a certain date, you can get a reduction of a certain amount. And I'm not sure how long. It's been quite a while, long before I took over. So unfortunately, there's no quote unquote discount at that point that can be given. It's just the exclusions that they could apply for.
Anyone else have any questions of Melissa or Ryan? If not, Ryan, we thank you. Melissa, we thank you for your time coming
Thank you.
forward.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, the next thing we have is the resolution for Department of Commerce Building Reuse Grant Project for Landworth, and I'm gonna let, Troy, you're on.
So,
Item C.
thank you, Mayor. So, item C for our special meeting is a resolution from the Department of Commerce, for, Project Labyrinth. This project, should be announced by the Governor's Office, April 21st of this year. This project, was approved, the application was approved and should be awarded on that April 21st date. This project is anticipated to bring 139 new jobs to Edenton within the next 2 years and an additional 50 within years 3 to 5. This is a pretty significant new business or expansion that we're seeing here, and we'll be able to provide more details of that. But what's promising for the town is the number of jobs that was agreed upon by this business to bring them here. So we're very excited about this, and Liza and the folks with the partnership have worked very hard to secure this funding. So we recommend that council approve this resolution.
Corey, I've got a question about the governor's announcement of it. When the governor's office announces it, do we share that or retweet it or get that out there? I've had one or two people express concern that we do it under code names, and I tell them that the Department of Commerce and the governor's office requires it to be confidential until it's not. And I think it would be a good shot in the arm for everybody to know when that happens, but also remove some of the mystery around it.
We can do that. I think that making those public announcements and sharing the information from the governor's office at that time would be the best practice for the town as well as the news, to share that information. But anything prior to that, these code names are good.
What time are you looking at?
April 21st would be the announcement for this award from the governor's office.
Corey, is the amount of the award also something that can't be released, or did I miss that?
I do not have that information with me, but approximations at this time in the building reuse total 800,000 or more for this one particular location. A large portion of that, which is very exciting, will be for the building reuse piece, and over 200,000 of these building reuse funds will be geared towards pairing up with our local colleges for workforce development.
Okay, so we need to take a vote on approval of that, so I'll entertain a motion to
So
approve.
moved.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, any further discussion? First of all. Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, also, a resolution for Department of Commerce Building Reuse Project next, we need to vote on that as well.
Yes, and I also have Morgan Potts with us with DDE if there's any questions or concerns. And this also is a Department of Commerce grant for Project Net. And because the type of business and the job creation numbers, although significant for any commerce grant, what's unique about this one is it totals 25,000, and there is a match portion that was approved in March, this past month, March 8th. And that piece is for $1,250. This is more of a retail establishment, so the award amounts are not as high as what we would see for industrial development. And so we do recommend the council take action on this tonight for approval.
I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And the final thing on our special meeting is a budget amendment for the Freemason well rehab project.
Mayor, thank you. The last item we have is the amendment for the Freemason well project. If you remember, as part of our phase 2 water treatment improvements, there were 4 well sites that were considered for rehabilitation, as well as a ground storage tank to be added to the Beaver Hill facility. We had an emergency repair for one of our well sites at Freemason, and we had initially used the values that are shown, the $32,000 back from 2018 and 2019 dollars for the project. Well, at that time, we were prior to COVID, just like now. Since starting the phase 2 water treatment improvements, Freemason was removed from the scope of work from the original large-scale project because a more immediate need was needed for the repairs, and the scope was different than what the additional 3 well sites are undergoing at this time. Due to an increase, of course, again, to material costs, the original quote of $32,000 to do the repair has more than doubled, and we received a quote and invoice for roughly $56,000. No increase in labor, no increase in what was done. This is all material related. Luckily, we were able to work with the finance director. Virginia did an outstanding job and was able to find the additional $24,000 in funding that's needed from water and sewer sales that have exceeded our current budget by at least 5% already, where we are, and that the connection fees are over budget by almost 400% due to relocating fees from the electric department for the water meter reading. portion. So the finance director as well as myself request the council approve the budget amendment, take action tonight, so we can get these repairs paid for.
Okay. All right.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried. And I believe that completes our special meeting, and now we'll go into our committee meetings, and the first on our committee meeting, our administrative committee, and that is chaired by Councilman High.
Thank you, Mayor Stallings. Two matters to discuss tonight. The first one is a conflict of policy update that was included in our agenda packet. And the conflict of interest issue is very, very important to all of us. And this, and even more importantly to the community, they need to have trust that what we're voting on is free of any taint of bias or any self-interest or anything like that. So this is an attempt to codify that, so to speak. And I've taken a look at it, and what I would recommend, Corey, is we have our attorney take a look at it. I'd like to see the policy more closely track the language of the statute, or just to make sure that the particular provisions in it are specific to the North Carolina statute. And also, if we could do a word search in there just so it could read better. It has some terms that don't apply to us, and it makes it hard to read, at least to me. It refers to a board of directors as opposed to a council, and things of that nature. But if there's any way that administration and our attorney can get together, we maybe could have it in a position to vote on at the regular meeting that we have in April. But if we could have him take a look at that, just to shore it up. I just want to make sure it aligns and jives with the current statute. Is everybody okay with that? So Mayor, that's the recommendation. We would just ask that admin and legal get together on it, and perhaps it will be in a position for us to vote on it in April. The second, did you have a question?
Is there a difference between this conflict of interest statement and previous ones? Have there been any changes that, in terms of this update that you know of?
So based on discussions that Virginia and I have had, there was some verbiage that was missing that the Office of State Budget and Management requested be added.
Okay.
And so in addition to the revisions that we see here, their changes, their improvements were added to this document. So it is an update from what we previously had on file, and based on the two items that Councilman High brought up, we'll make those same revisions and bring back for our April 12th meeting.
and was one of the changes, if you know, was that one that addressed council persons that might sit on boards around town and things? Do you know, Virginia, if that was?
I'm trying to remember the exact verbiage. It was only really a simple, maybe 5 or 6 sentence policy that was adopted back in 2008.
Okay.
So it definitely did not pass their standards of policies, which is why they submitted the one that they did for us to review. But I can certainly email that to everybody tomorrow when I get back into the office. I do have a copy of it that Tam gave me when we started this policy.
Yeah, I'd really rather just see go to Hood and let him prepare it. I mean, I think that's a safer way to do it.
And one thing that I think is important to know, there has been a change in the law, and it actually came up when we were voting on something that would benefit the Boys and Girls Club. We used to think of conflicts of interest mainly in terms of, does it financially benefit me or my family? And of course, that's an obvious one, like, whoa, I don't need to be voting on this. But now if you sit on a board, it might be a charitable board, like the Boys and Girls Club, you're required to disclose that, and if your vote would benefit that club or organization, you need to disclose that and recuse yourself.
I think we're all on boards.
Yeah. Oh, we definitely, like Virginia said, the last one was in 2008, 14 years ago, and it was kind of minimal. So you could take a look at the 2008 one and see that this one has more meat in it. But yeah, if you could get that to us, Virginia, that would be good. So Mayor, the next item that the administrative committee needs to bring before the council is a update on the upgrade for the audio-visual equipment and systems that we have here in this building and in this room. I don't know if anybody else, at times I've received some complaints from people about our audio-visual system. And the administration through purchasing agent Bud Powell and also Tammy Woodley have been working with our IT staff to improve our audio-visual equipment in the overflow room and here in council chambers. There have been 3 quotes that we have received. One was for $92,000, one was for $62,000, and one was for $25,000. And the recommendation has come from administration that we accept the lower bid of $25,000. And I would just like to have some real quick discussion. Do we feel good about that bid? I know normally we look for the lowest, most responsible bidder, and seems like 2 were right.
Are we getting
I mean,
everything?
one was right there, and then the other 2 were very high. And I just want to make sure.
Are we getting everything we need? That's, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
and the other 2 quotes were like giving us things we really didn't need.
Okay, so they had all the bells and whistles.
They were kind of beefing it up and,
Okay, all right.
Oh, that's what I wanted to ask.
Yeah, it looks
Tammy,
weird.
because there was a big difference between $100,000 and $20-some thousand.
Like
You know,
$70,000.
that's what I'm talking about.
And so when we met back in the fall to receive the initial 2, which were the higher 2, that's when Tammy and Bud were able to reach back out to some additional vendors to get some folks in, because initially we had trouble getting more than 2 quotes in because of limited materials. And I think that's why these were so inflated at the time. But since then, we received a 3rd bid, and I'm glad we did, because it's substantially more reasonably priced for the town's
I
improvement.
talked to Bud Friday, and he seems to think that this $25,000 bid is very adequate for what we need.
Yeah, I talked to him yesterday about it, and he said the same thing. And it just sounds like the other 2 bidders were trying to upsell us a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe some things we didn't need. So if there's an explanation there like that, I'm comfortable with it. And is everybody comfortable moving it to full council for a vote? You good with it now that we've got that explanation?
Just a couple of questions. Yeah. Corey, this will set up the room next door, the overflow room, with the screen so that people can both see and hear what's going on in here. Is that?
our goal is to get more public back in this room.
Okay.
So we want to install a TV on this wall and
Okay.
on this wall.
Okay.
So that way we can hopefully get an audience maybe back in the middle of the room, and new tables for y'all that's gonna be smaller to kind of bring all this back up. Cause as you remember, when you had
Because it
the
used
other
to be
set up,
all up there, right?
and 2 of you sat at a table.
Yeah.
If you remember. Yeah.
So we're gonna have more room here like we
We
used
want
to for
bring-
the
yeah,
audience to
bring
start
this up.
hopefully coming back.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, Mayor, that concludes our reports.
All right, next is our finance committee, and that is chaired by Councilman Dixon.
Okay, we just got some money coming in, we've got to appropriate it, so, we've got a resolution for the sale of our DART system to the North Carolina State, I guess, University Police Department for $4,999. I thought it was kind of nice, we had something, this surplus here that we're selling to be used in Raleigh. So, if we have a,
Didn't happen often.
anybody have any questions about that, I think that's something we just send on to council, along with the budget amendment for the sale of that also. So those 2 things will go on, to full council next week, or in 2 weeks. And then the second thing is exciting, we've gotten an extra $500,000 for the town, Harbor Ferry project. And, so we have to, say we're gonna take it, and then there's a budget amendment that goes along with that. And anything you wanna add, Corey, about that?
No, so we, other than we're very excited for the contingency to come in separately from the initial resolution and budget amendment that we approved back in beginning of March or late February. So this is contingency fund for that account, and we're excited to have that there.
Okay, so we'll send both of those to full council. Anybody has any questions or? Okay, that's it for the
Okay,
Finance
our
Committee.
next and final, committee meeting is the Utilities Committee, and that's chaired by Councilman Blunt.
What on that, I had that on my screen. What was that?
Resolution appointment of North Carolina Eastern Municipal Power Agency Board of Commissioners.
Yeah.
Corey, you might.
Corey,
Yeah, so I'll take this.
Corey, please, Corey.
No,
Since I surprised him, you might.
I started looking at you.
so,
You didn't look at your agenda, did you?
back on October 6th of 2021, I was appointed and took the oath for the Commissioner for the Board of Commissioners for the North Carolina Eastern Municipal Power Agency. At that time, I had began some discussions with the executive assistant and that board as far as alternates, and as I attended more of those board meetings, I did see that there was a need for an alternate commissioner in my absence if there was something that would require a vote on behalf of the town from that board. And one of the things I had spoke with our electric director, and so the resolution that we have to be sent to full council, whereas Mike Nichols was hired to the town of Edenton as the electric director, and in my absence, what I am recommending is that Mike be appointed as the alternate commissioner if needed. And this does require a resolution and council minutes for the board to accept that nomination. And so,
Thank you, Corey.
And that completes our agenda.